Hi there, I'm Michael Currie, the CEO of Fling, and I'm here to talk about how to be an A employee. What is an A employee or A player? We're familiar with the grade system from university, from high school, F, D, C, B, A plus. So I'm here to introduce a similar grading system to people's behaviors and discuss why you'd want to be a good employee and some practical ideas for how to distinguish good behaviors from bad behaviors. So let's ask a simple question before we talk about how. Why? Why try to be excellent at your job? So I've certainly been in jobs throughout my life where it's not exactly the kind of job that I thought I would be in. Feel like maybe I haven't reached the right job for my stage in life, or I feel like maybe the job is good, but some task I've been assigned is beneath my dignity, or maybe something has happened at the office and it seems unfair that I'm supposed to do this task and somebody else not, or maybe I feel I'm not paid enough for what I'm doing, or there's some other reason why I feel like I don't really want to be excellent at this job. I don't want to give this company the benefit of my skills and abilities. And so there's a temptation to coast or not do your best and not be an excellent employee. And I think there's two options. This is actually a confusion of cause and effect, because you may not have the job that you want because you're not working hard at your current job. So there's actually two ways to think about, two options here. Either you don't have the job that you want, therefore you should behave badly at your current job, which is the temptation. Or option two, maybe you don't work hard, you're not excellent at your job, therefore you're not going to achieve your goals and you're not going to have that job or career that you really want. So I think the temptation to be negligent is a reversal of the correct cause and effect. And in fact, you can reach your dream job by demonstrating excellence in your non-dream job. This is because these behaviors are habits that take time to entrench, and to reach a very high level of excellence, you need most of this behavior to be unconscious. You can't just suddenly become an A player. It takes time to layer good habit on top of good habit so that it's instinctive. Also, in any job, you have the chance to distinguish yourself not just in front of your boss, but in front of many people, fellow employees, clients, vendors, partners, all of whom, or some of whom, may have links to other people, other jobs. They will notice that you're excellent. Excellence is highly noticeable. So, how do you advance in your career? Do your current job well. Develop the habit of behaving like an A-level employee in any domain, whether it's the thing that you want to do or not, and this will be noticed. So another question, do you need to be a genius to be excellent? Am I talking about some kind of inaccessible skill that only certain people can do and other people cannot? No. In fact, all of the behaviors of an A employee have nothing to do with genius. It's about effort and attitude. Anyone can adopt these behaviors with the right application of energy and developing these habits. So a lot of people have probably seen this in the internet somewhere on Facebook or something shared, 10 things that require zero talent. So again, this is not something I'm saying you need to have excellent, a lot of skill to be able to do, to be excellent, but instead, being on time, work ethic, effort, energy, body language, passion, doing extra, being prepared, having initiative, being coachable, and attitude. All of these things are not things that you need to be super skilled in order to accomplish. So ideally, you would be practicing these behaviors since you're very young, but it's never too late. So don't feel badly about this. Everyone, learns behaviors over time. So even in high school or earlier, you can start to practice these behaviors. And these ideally should be a deep, deep, deep habit already at the time that you're in university, so you can get really, really good grades by following these habits. What you learn in school, at university even, is not really that important to your future career. This is a cliche. People often talk about this like what you do in your work is often nothing to do with what you learned in school. But actually, school is still quite useful as sort of a training ground for developing these habits or for practicing these habits. And you really need to not just practice them, but demonstrate them, because by demonstrating them in university, your grades are very high, and employers will notice this. So you'll be able to jump up several levels and skip some steps if you're able to apply for a job with an impressive GPA. You'll basically get a job in a position that you want, as opposed to if you have a bad GPA. Even if the classes you don't feel like they're interesting to you, or they're below your dignity, please try to apply these habits so that when it comes time to apply for a job, you're able to show your employer that you are an A player through those grades, and then they'll slot you into a really good job. And also, when you start that job, you're going to be able to hit the ground running because you have all those good habits that you've developed while in university. Okay, so how to be on time. This is an example of a good habit, right? This is something that I've struggled with my whole life, actually. And so it's kind of like the blind leading the blind here, but I'm going to tell you how it's worked for me as I've conquered this habit, this bad habit of being late, and turning it into a good habit of being on time. So do things far earlier than you think are necessary. Being on time is actually late. You should think of it as being early is your goal. So try to be 30 minutes or earlier to meetings. That might seem excessive. It certainly did to me when I first started doing this. But there is a power to being early for meetings. You're already seated. Your thoughts are collected. You're at peace. And the other people who are showing up just on time or a little bit late, they're disheveled. They have to set down their things, arrange their hair. They just give a very poor impression of them. And people might not get a chance to see much of your work on a one-on-one basis, but they certainly will notice, a huge number of people will notice your punctuality, and it's just going to reflect very poorly on you. And so if you're the one on time and the other person is late, actually that puts you in this very powerful position of being magnanimous to them and saying, oh no, it's fine that you're late, and they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. And so then it's kind of like they'll owe you a favor, right? So learn to enjoy having that power. Learn to enjoy being early, and that feeling of relaxation that you can have throughout the day, like the peacefulness that you get from never being rushed or late. And that's not just for meetings, it's also for work. So when you're doing tasks, don't leave it to the last minute, because it's just an unpleasant feeling to do that. And it's a habit. You have to develop this habit of doing things in advance of when they're due, so that you don't have this rushed feeling all the time. You can live longer probably and not get gray hair. It's also a consequence of not taking on too many meetings or too many things. Often I'll book a meeting back to back with another meeting, and then of course I'm just setting myself up for lateness for the second meeting. And it's also about work. Like if you commit to too many things, then you're going to be in a position where it's going to be impossible to do the tasks without being rushed. Other practical ways of ensuring that you're on time: develop habits. like checking your calendar the night before. This is what I do. Oh, and also first thing in the morning, so you don't miss a meeting. That's even worse than being late, is if you completely forget about a meeting. That's really embarrassing when you're meeting somebody and you just forgot about it. Happens rarely to me, but when it does, oh man, that's really bad. Any time commitment, you should really add it to the calendar the moment that you make that commitment. And everyone has a smartphone. It should be no problem to do that, because then you don't forget. And you should really practice inbox zero, which is a habit that is a bit of a consequence of what's called Getting Things Done by David Allen. I highly recommend that you read that book. It kind of changed my life. But in particular about email, archiving all the emails that don't have a next action. There's an archive button in Gmail. If you click that button on all the emails in your inbox that have no next action, then all you have staring at you are the things that you must take an action on, and it becomes much easier not to miss something. And it's also not as intimidating to look at. Okay, so another habit that's important to be an A player is focus. So find a time each day to do focused work, at least 2 hours. This is what Benjamin Franklin recommended, for example. So in a busy open office, which has its own benefits, you're able to collaborate and communicate with others very, very rapidly. And so almost every modern office is an open plan. But the downside of those kinds of offices is that it's sometimes hard to find an opportunity to be focused, because people are always interrupting. And so as a subtle signal to your colleagues not interrupt you, you could put on headphones. And if that doesn't work, you should probably have a conversation with them and explain, look, that's what this means. Please don't interrupt me unless it's a fire is going to burn down the building or something. If that really isn't working, then you can try working for another room, request a different work arrangement, potentially working from home. Find a way to have focus time, because if you don't have focus time, it's going to be very hard to become an A player, because some of these other things that I'm going to talk about really depend on being able to do work. If you can't even do work, then of course you're never going to be able to be an A player. So try to use this focus time to do your important tasks. So don't just push emails around and waste your focus time. Use it. Use it for the thing that is the most important thing that day that really needs to get done. And you'll really have a great feeling after you've accomplished it. And all the other little things that you have to do in an office, like respond to some emails and talk to people and everything else, that can all be taken care of in your other time. But you'll really have that core feeling of, oh, I really got something done today, if you do that important thing. But if you don't do that, then at the end of the day, you'll kind of leave work and you'll think, oh, geez, what did I do today? I just, ran around and just put out fires and did random stuff, but I really didn't get anything done. So that's not a good feeling to have, especially if it happens many, many days in a row. Finally, and this is, I think, a very, very, very powerful technique that I would highly recommend doing if you're having trouble getting focused on a particular task, is do not be embarrassed to do this. Find a colleague to sit with you and work on that task with you. It feels like you're going to cut your productivity in half, or the two of you in half, because you're looking at one screen at the same time. But actually, it forces you to be focused, because you can't switch to Facebook for a few minutes, or you can't think about another task, and people are far less likely to interrupt, right? If you're, two of you working together, collaborating closely, and you'll be very focused on getting that task done. And so I can't recommend that enough for work that you're having a hard time trying to finish. Okay, so before we get into all these letters talking about these different levels of competence here, I want to address the question of whether you can change from one letter to another. Can I go from a D player to a C player, back down to a D player, and then to an A player, sometimes maybe even in the same day? And absolutely that is the case. I mean, all of us have moments or behaviors that are not so good and behaviors that are probably very good. It's a matter of proportion. So it's also something that's malleable over time. So if you apply energy and effort and you listen to the feedback that I'm providing today, then you can become a person that is exhibiting A behaviors nearly all of the time. And you can move from a person that maybe is mostly C behaviors to B behaviors, and then all the way up to A behaviors. Feel free to discuss this with your boss and ask what he or she thinks. That will be one way to hold yourself accountable to this. But at the end of the day, you may decide that you just don't want to put that much effort into doing an excellent job at the particular job that you have. And if that really is the case, even after I've said, hey, try to be excellent at any job you have, if you really feel like this is just not for me and I just can't find the motivation to go to the office every day, I just hate this job for whatever reason, and it seems impossible to resolve, you owe it to yourself and to your company, but definitely even to yourself, to think about this and discuss it with your boss. You should not sacrifice your mental and physical health to be in a job that it doesn't excite you and doesn't make you happy every day to go into the office. If you don't have enthusiasm for the company and for its mission, or at least for what you're going to get out of it, for how it's moving you along in your career, you can be picking up trash if you think that doing that is going to be making you a good living and you're going to be going home and providing for your family. This is a perfectly noble thing to be doing, and you may be able to be excited about that, the monetary aspect of it, or there might be other motivations that you have. But my point is, if you can't find the motivation to be excellent at that job, you owe it to yourself to find an alternative and to leave that position. So as I say, a person can change from one level to another all in the same day. So perfection is not the goal, and you shouldn't be disappointed if you make mistakes. And if you deviate from perfect behavior, sometimes we all make mistakes. This is a very normal and human thing. We will always make mistakes, and that's something that you should in fact build into your systems, to know that you're going to make mistakes. For example, I know that I'll forget things, so it's important for me to take notes and keep everything in a calendar. Just like I said, please add your meetings upcoming into your calendar right away, because I know that I'm going to be imperfect, I'm going to forget. So you want to kind of protect yourself against your own mistakes with these habits that you build up. But F behaviors are worse than mistakes, and they are not acceptable, not even once. And I will be talking about those behaviors momentarily. So, does every job have to be my dream job? No. However, as I say, it's completely acceptable and quite normal to work at a company that may not align with your final life goal, but acts as a stepping stone. So as long as you plan to remain at that job for a significant period of time, like 2 or more years, it's normal behavior for an employee to be at a certain job and think of it as a stepping stone. It doesn't cause harm to you, it doesn't cause harm to your employer. It's perfectly expected. But in a stepping stone type job, it is still crucial that you practice and exhibit these A behaviors as if it was your dream job. Because as I've said, practicing these habits will cause you to be prepared for your future career steps, and you'll be able to distinguish yourself so you can create opportunities when people see how good you are to move up and out into whatever areas that you wish. So if you're doing a great job, you'll get recommendation letters. Clients will see your work and talk about you. Networking events, other employees etc. All of these linkages, all of these different people will see your excellent work. Another question you might have: is my boss my enemy in this goal of being excellent? Should I be scared of my boss and what he or she might be seeing? In fact, it takes a lot of time and expense to replace an employee, to replace you. No one is more interested or would be happier to see you succeed than your immediate supervisor. It would make them look good. It would make their life easier. It would be in their best interest if you do well. So you should feel that your greatest ally in becoming excellent and your greatest partner for success is your boss. So it's a bit counterintuitive because you think, oh, if I have bad behaviors, I shouldn't be talking about them with my boss. I should be hiding them or something. But actually confronting those behaviors and discussing them openly and soliciting feedback on how you can be better, that's the best thing you can do to become excellent. The best feedback process is one that includes someone who sees you every day, like your boss, and interacts with you the most closely. So one of the most basic A behaviors is soliciting that kind of feedback. So if you're not getting feedback from your boss, please take the initiative to say, hey, would you mind if we sat down or we had a coffee once a month or once every 3 months at the minimum? Should be at least once every 3 months. Do not wait for your annual review. You should be soliciting feedback far, far more frequently, even if it's not being given out by your boss. Okay, so let's go up the grades here. Let's go from F all the way up to A. So what are some behaviors of an F grade employee, which would be a kind of employee where they would be immediately fired? So physically assaulting another employee, being under the influence of drugs, lying, such as fabricating a number, claiming to have done something when it's demonstrably not true, stealing company property, sabotage, setting up a competing business while still employed at the first job, or revealing confidential information to a competitor. This is behavior where there's really just no excuse for this type of behavior. Another F employee immediate firing thing would be hiding a mistake. So making a mistake, as I've discussed, even a big mistake, is almost never an F fireable offense. In fact, nearly all employees, even the best employees, make mistakes regularly. But failing to escalate that mistake, especially actively lying or hiding it, is never acceptable and will result in immediate dismissal from any position. So you really want to think about mistakes as something that you can learn from. But over and above that, hiding them is a big problem. So here's an example. Okay, so let's see an example of some F employee behavior from the popular TV show Seinfeld.
You only have 2 more weeks before your benefits run out.
Yes, and I was hoping perhaps to get a 13-week extension, if that's possible.
So where have you been looking for work?
Well, you know what I've discovered, Mrs. Sokol? It's not so much the looking as the listening. I listen for work. And as I'm looking and listening, I'm also looking. You cannot discount looking. It's sort of a combination. It's looking and listening. Listening and looking. But you must look.
Can you be specific about any of these companies?
Specific? Let's see. I've walked in and out of so many buildings, they all blend in together.
But just give me one name.
One name, absolutely. Let's see. There's Vandelay Industries. I just saw them. I got very close there. Very close.
And what type of company is that?
Latex manufacturing. So.
And you interviewed there?
Yes, for a sales position. Latex salesman, the selling of latex and latex-related products. They just wouldn't give me a chance. Damn it.
Now, I'm gonna need an address and a phone number for this Vandalay company.
You like gum? Because I have a friend in the gum business. I got a gum guy. I make one phone call. I have boxes of gum delivered right to your door.
The address?
The address is... Jose Jimenez. You recognize it?
No.
Jose Jimenez. Very funny. Really, he's very funny.
The address.
Vandalay is 129 West 81st Street. It's a very small industry, Vandalay. It's one of the reasons I wanted to work for them.
The phone number.
That's KL5 8383. Are you planning on calling them soon? Because they're very strange hours.
As soon as I'm done with you.
Well, you know what? I'll check in with you next week. I gotta run now because I got a full plate this afternoon. All right. Really good to
Pull you back.
Well, it's a dog leg left, so I play the hook, right? Well, hold on. There's another call.
Terry!
George?
Kramer, put Jerry on the phone.
Yeah, look, I'm in the middle of something. Call back.
Kramer, no!
So the ball takes off, and I'm waiting for it to turn. Yellow. What delay industries?
No! Vandalay! Say Vandalay!
Now you're way off. Well, yeah, that's the right number, but this isn't an apartment.
No,
What?
say Vandalay! Say
Yeah, no problem. How did you know who they wanted?
And you want to be my latex salesman.
Okay, so that's one example of F, employee behavior. In that case, he wasn't an employee, but nevertheless, that's line. Okay, so let's see another example of egregious, fireable employee behavior.
Okay, they're ready. It's showtime.
What? Oh, I just said, I have Showtime, the cable channel.
Must be nice. Scully and Hitchcock are just looking at each other. I'm a little worried that I'm gonna be able to...
You son of a bitch! Oh! Oh! Oh!
Okay, where'd it go?
Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah!
Oh my God, they're in a penis punch 69!
Ooh! Ah!
Hey! What's going on? Why are you fighting?
Well, he punched me in the nuts, so I punched him in the nuts. So he punched me in the nuts, so I punched him in the nuts.
But why? You still haven't told me why.
Ray, how's your penis?
Sore. How's your penis?
Sore.
I'm proud of us.
Okay, so let's move on to the D employee. Okay, so a D employee is not performing so badly that they would be immediately fired. In fact, they sometimes might even do good work, but they may have personal hygiene issues, body odor, bad breath. They might have a messy desk, messy food type situation. And And they may, in fact, exhibit one or more of these toxic behaviors. They might be too aggressive in their talking. They might be gossiping. They might be often late or absent from work, calling in sick a lot, procrastinating on doing work, always giving excuses for why it's not done yet. They might just contribute to the negative, to a negative atmosphere by being very pessimistic about the work that's going on at the company. So paradoxically, D employees can often be highly productive, but they may simply have a very negative attitude. So they might find flaws in every suggested solution if you're in a meeting with them. They may point out negative characteristics or gossip. They may frequently arrive late, miss deadlines, but nevertheless believe themselves to be indispensable, which might feed into this attitude. And in fact, they may show emotion or anger in front of others, which again would, is very damaging to morale. Okay, so let's see another example now of an employee with a D grade here. So away we go.
Sergeant, a member of the Commissioner Selection Committee is coming in today to tour the precinct and do some interviews. Would you mind speaking with her?
Of course. Terry loves answering the hard questions.
Oh, here she is. I guess you don't have time to take off those ridiculous suspenders.
What?
Hello, Miss Sumter.
Hello, Captain. I'm excited to speak to your subordinates and learn more about your management style.
I thought you could talk to Sergeant Jeffords here.
Sergeant? Oh, I'd rather not talk to a supervisor. I was hoping to interview one of your detectives. Perhaps, him?
No!
Excuse me?
There was a wasp near me, which has since disappeared. You can interview Detective Hitchcock, and I am completely fine with that.
Okay, so Detective Hitchcock, not anything better than a D employee. Okay. So in fact, let's not only talk about employees with bad attitude, but also how a supervisor might even deal with such an employee. So I'll show a little video about that.
Working with someone who has a bad attitude is not a pleasant experience. That being said, leaders can't read minds, and so it's entirely possible that this bad attitude is just a miscommunication. So here's how you can handle an employee with a bad attitude. First, ask to speak in private. Then use the think big methodology: behavior, impact, and get agreement. Outline the behavior in question and keep it judgment-free. This is super important, and it can mean the difference between "Woo-hoo-hoo, someone's a grumpy Gus today," well, somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. I hear someone's a grumperson. And I saw you shrug earlier when I assigned a task to you, and it gave the impression that you couldn't be bothered. After you've laid out the behavior clearly, detail the impact that behavior has on the team. Then finally, get agreement on how to go forward. In the end, it should sound something like this. Jen, yesterday I noticed that you rolled your eyes at Gary, and at the team huddle you sighed when Annie asked a question. I worry this gives the impression that you have a bad attitude, and it will make your coworkers reluctant to work with you. Is this something you're aware of? Good luck.
So if we leave D employees in place, they can not only impact, of course, their own productivity may be low, but the behaviors that they have may lead to adverse effects. So low morale, unproductivity, low productivity, workplace stress, burnout, poor work-life balance, and high turnover, meaning other employees, especially the A or B employees, may leave the company because they don't want to work with D employees. So let's move on to the C employee. So the C employee is not so toxic, so negative, so bad with hygiene, and has the issues of the D employee, and has no issues like egregious fireable offenses like the F employee. However, the C employee has mildly toxic behaviors like defensiveness or passiveness, sorry, disorganization, and this disorganization will slowly accumulate over time, that so that others, for example, their boss or fellow employees, must deal with that. So maybe they're not saving the files in the right place, or not naming them properly, or doing kind of shoddy work that needs to be repaired by others. And their poor quality of work may, if it actually gets out to the client, may also leave a bad impression. And it's deeply frustrating still for A players to work with these types of people. And A players may leave out of frustration. C employees may also do things like make controversial or racy social media posts. So I would recommend, to avoid that behavior, maintain a separate profile if you really must have a sort of a racy version of yourself with a different name to avoid business contacts finding that social media profile, since whenever you deal with external people, they're going to search your name on the internet, and they will find that content that will reflect badly on the company. So in fact, bosses can even be C-level employees. So let's check that out.
I'm Laura McLeod, and I help employees resolve conflict in the workplace. My boss is very disorganized and refuses to let me help him get things in order. When he needs something, I often struggle to find it, and he gets angry. How do I handle this? The goal is to work as efficiently as possible within the system. It sounds like you've approached your boss a few times about the disorganization, and he's resistant. You'll have to let it go. That's the way he works. That's the way he works. You need to find a way to work efficiently within that. So, next time he asks you for something and you're not quite sure where it is, smile brightly and say, "I'm happy to get that for you, but I'm really not clear as to where it is. I don't understand your filing system. If you'd like to show me, I'm happy to look for it, and I'm sure I could find it." Remember, the direct approach is always the best approach.
So to be clear, I share that example in showing how the boss who was disorganized was the C-level employee in that situation. And that boss should change their behavior. That advice there was for a subordinate how to deal with a boss, like a C-level boss. And that may be good advice for how to deal with such a person, but from the perspective of the boss of that boss, really that person needs to improve their behavior. Okay, so let's move on to the B employee. So the B employee exhibits attention to detail. They have good grammar and spelling, for example, in their communication. Before sending out a document or other work, the B employee will check the document one final time for review for obvious mistakes or issues, whereas the C employee might not do that, might finish the job, but then not do that final check or have that conscientiousness to ensure that there's a high quality of work that's being sent out. The B-level employee will remember instructions as they were given, will have taken notes, whereas the C-level employee might rely on their memory or might forget things that have been assigned to them and rely on others to remind them to finish the task. So the B employee will, in order to do this, practice active listening and reading. So carefully think about what the instruction or request was, every word of that instruction. That's active listening or active reading to make sure that that employee has understood what's being asked. The B employee also has excellent grooming, dresses well. Now we're not saying you have to wear a tuxedo to work, but you're clean and you're consistent with the norm in the office. So you can see already a B employee is excellent. Is moderately excellent. But there's a whole other level, the A employee, of behavior that goes far beyond this kind of passive excellence that you're seeing here. This excellence where you're at the B level, you're getting things done, you're performing your tasks. But now let's see just how different an A employee is. So A employees are accountable for, they hold themselves accountable for results, not tasks. So a B employee is doing tasks excellently, but the A player is achieving results in an excellent manner. So in order to accomplish this, you must carefully listen and take notes, just like a B player. But you must also ask many questions to understand what is the expected result, like asking for an example, and you should work on that task with enough time so that you can be very detail oriented. You should follow up by sending an email or a message to confirm the discussion and that you acknowledge that you're going to be responsible for that result. You should be conscientious about the progress of the result and escalate to your boss or to others if you don't understand something, or if you think that something is going to interfere with achieving the result at the time that you promised or that's expected. And that's being proactive, meaning don't wait for someone to say, hey, don't you, that this thing is due in 2 days. Do you think that we should follow up with, this person who is supposed to be providing us with some information as input? Instead, you should be that person. You should be that person following up with others who have tasks that will be needed for that final result. So it's not enough to say, oh, well, I emailed them and now I'm just waiting for the response. Or, oh, I called, but they weren't there and they said they'd call back, so I'm waiting for that call back. Well, you can wait for a little while, but if someone's asking you about the status of something where you're accountable for a result, that's not enough. You need to care about actually achieving that final result, which means that you're going to be doing that follow-up yourself and not waiting for someone to prod you into, oh yeah, I guess I should follow up with them. And all along the way, the stakeholders who care about this result, it might be your boss, it might be a whole group of people who are being CC'd on some email chain about the project, or it might be your fellow programmers. If you're a programmer, you should be communicating along the way about the intermediate steps as appropriate, of course. I don't drown people in information if it's not appropriate. You have to make that judgment. And once the result has happened, communicate that as well with the relevant people. So an A player is not just responsible for their tasks, they are responsible for the result, which may involve many other people and making sure that they do their work too, and many other things. So this is a kind of employee that can really be relied upon. This is the dream employee of any boss, because they can talk about some issue that's taking place and then rely upon that person to make that issue go away. So an A employee does all that, what I mentioned, but an A employee also makes others better. So they help out with other people's work. They seek out other employees. They may be very social, making friends with everyone, enhancing the social life of the company. But that's not every A employee. I'm not saying you have to be a social butterfly in order to be an A employee, but it's certainly one trait that would be looked upon as an A trait. So an A employee also actively solicits feedback. So again, this initiative idea. So just like I mentioned before, you ask your boss regularly for feedback on what you're doing well and maybe what's not going well. and we can even start to get into strategic discussions about the direction of the whole team and what's going on. And you actively improve your competence in your particular area. So if you're a lawyer or an accountant or an engineer, you should really care about your competence, and perhaps it's classes or online reading or something, but you should, as you remain within whatever role you have, you should become a resource for others around you. So people should start to see you as the subject matter expert for the work that you're doing. An A employee over a long period of time would be someone where if someone asks, "Oh, how does this work?" or "How does that work?" you would generally not be saying, "Oh, I don't know." Now, I'm not saying that an A employee has to know everything, but you're going to start to become, as I say, the expert in the area that is your focus. And so if I'm the boss and I'm asking a person who is working directly in a particular area, like maybe they're responsible for the corporate filings for the group, and if I'm asking them, "Oh, when was the last time we made a corporate filing?" and if they say, "I don't know," that's not A behavior. Although maybe they can look it up, the fact that they don't even know it is sort of a red flag that they're not an A employee, because they're not actively working on their knowledge base in their area of competence. So let's talk about some other behaviors that might seem like A behaviors. Oh, sorry, before we talk about that, really impressive, simple A behaviors. These are real, legitimate A behaviors. The illusion A behaviors that we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so really impressive, excuse me, really impressive, but simple A behaviors. Put yourself in the perspective of a recipient. So if you're emailing somebody, you finish your email and then you anticipate what questions that person might have and answer those questions too. This is an incredibly impressive behavior. So for example, maybe if I'm a financial analyst, I'll write an email. "Dear Jim, you asked us for the return on your account last month, and that return was 5.06%. So that might be the end of the email for a B player. But an A player will think, "Okay, but wait, now this person receiving this email is going to see that number, and that's going to be too high a number." They know that their range is normally between 2 and 4%. Okay, so the A player adds the following information. They say, "Normally, your return is within 2 and 4%, and the reason for the excess return is because of the strong currency effect on your US dollar holdings." And then further analysis, like those holdings were 40% of the account as at 31 December, and the US dollar from a Canadian investor perspective returned 12.06%, accounting for the additional incremental return. So that is a comprehensive answer that fully answers the question that the person might have while they're getting that information. It also adds a feeling of security for the other person, that they are really getting a number that has been looked into and that has been validated, since it's not just typed in, and they might be worried, "Oh, maybe it's a typo, or maybe it wasn't really carefully done." Okay, so an A employee is motivated, and yet they're humble. So you can find someone who's skilled and smart and talented, but someone who has humility about that and is not going to be annoying for other people to work with is actually just that much better. And it's a real career limiter if you have a real attitude about yourself, because maybe you're going to be unwilling to take certain kinds of work, or you might be delegating things inappropriately to your colleagues. That sort of thing is really not A behavior. An A employee is dedicated, they're consistent, so that you're not going to be a A employee on 2 days and then a D employee on other days. The best kind of A employee should be consistently good. They should be accountable, dependable, self-manageable, which means that you have initiative, and have integrity. Okay, so now we arrive at the ultimate, the A+ employee. So the A+ employee is everything that an A employee is, but is also a deep domain expert and has the enthusiasm and energy to become an industry recognized expert. So they put themselves out into the world and have and socialize with other people in their same role and are known in the community, perhaps in the city or in the industry. So some examples of A+ employees that you may know about: Steve Wozniak from Apple. He was the first employee with Steve Jobs, and he invented the Apple II, and he was a deep subject matter expert. Basically, this is where you start to get into genius, right? Jeff Dean from Google, he invented Gmail and I believe Google Maps as well. And Joseph Mardal from Tesla, who recently left to join Zipline, a drone delivery company. He was a lead engineer. It's partly responsible for Tesla's engineering advantage over other car makers. So he was a celebrity in his own right, over and above Tesla. And then of course Dennis Ritchie, the celebrated inventor of Unix, who was never an entrepreneur himself, but was an employee of Bell Labs. So these types of employees are extremely, extremely prized by any employer. And it might be difficult to get to that level, but any employee can actively maintain a social network within the problem domain of the company. For example, if you're an accountant, you can socialize with other accounting people, become involved in accounting groups at the local level or international or national levels. You can attend industry events, have industry friends, post on social media about things related to accounting, related to your company, and have that very highly professional social media profile with a professional, headshot, and really put yourself out there as an exemplar of excellence, and use that social media profile. So that's the A+ employee. So let's go through an example of a task and how these different types of employees, from F all the way up to A+, would handle it. Okay, so I'm going to have to go ahead and ask you every Friday afternoon, could you please email this client a TPS report? Okay, so that's the instruction. Every Friday afternoon, email the TPS report to the client. Okay, so the F employee, well, they never send the email. They pee in the sink, and then the boss reminds the employee the following week, hey, could you please send that TPS report? But the employee says, oh, that's not my job, and lies, saying that I thought that Stacy sent it. And then later at the elevator, he slaps Stacy's posterior as he waits for the elevator. The D employee. The D employee also does not send the email initially until he's reminded by the boss the following week, and after that D employee has showed up late to work. So the D employee goes, and then walks over to his desk and mutters to himself that he doesn't think that this task is necessary. And then he slaps off an email, dear client, here's your report, with some typos there, and then attaches a Word document rather than the correct PDF, and there are mistakes in that Word document. So this is the kind of Wally level employee here, where you see in Dilbert here. All right, a C-level employee. So the C-level employee does prepare the report, and yet he sends out that email only on the final day. And this prevents the employee from attending a social event for the company that day, and also helping other employees with urgent tasks on that day because it has to be rushed, and he's doing the work at the last minute on that Friday. And then he'll say, dear client, please find attached your TPS report. TPS report is attached, and it's mostly correct, but it does have a few small spelling errors because The C employee didn't review it carefully at the end for accuracy, and also was rushed to do it. The B employee. So the B employee does send the email on time. Dear client, please find attached your TPS report. And the TPS report is attached and it is correct. However, he does not inform the boss. So he's not CCing the boss and doesn't tell the boss this happened. So the boss has to follow up the next week with the employee, who then the employee is able to say, okay, oh yeah, actually I did send that, the TPS report. So just a little minor, imperfection in communication, basically. The A employee sends the email earlier than expected, maybe on the Monday or the Tuesday, and the A employee CCs the boss, and if it's appropriate, also tells the boss by line or in person that the TPS report, hey boss, just to let you know, the TPS report has been sent. So that's the A employee. Seems great, right? But now let's look at the A+ employee. So on the A+ employee's own initiative, he finds a way to change the process with the client so that this TPS report is automated and or made unnecessary. And that employee proposes this. Hey, can we change the way we do this process, and proposes that as a solution clearly in writing to the boss, asking for permission to implement. And then the employee takes care of the details of implementation and communicating all the changes to the client with the prior consent and authorization from the boss. So this is the perfect employee. And it kind of reminds me of a senior engineer who will slowly improve everything around them. So a senior engineer will find issues and mentor others and fix technical debts, comment on code that maybe had previously not been commented on, and will seek out actively areas and try to resolve bugs, actively refactor the code to make it and improve it and make it better, clarify APIs, automating processes. So from the perspective of an employee that would be a programmer, this is the kind of behavior that an A+ senior engineer would be doing. All right, so back to A-level here. So A-level employee behaviors. You should do what you say what you do, and then what you have done. Have that initiative. Make other people around you better. Help them. Think about how to make the company successful, and take initiative to think of ideas or actions that will make the company better. That starts to get into A+ behavior. In a large organization, you might just think about how to make your boss more successful. That's a great way to to put yourself out of your own head as a particular employee, but instead to think about the bigger picture of what's happening in your whole team. You could participate in the social life of the office actively. This is optional, if you have a very specific job and you don't really like socializing, for example, this is optional, but that doesn't excuse being entirely hostile to your colleagues. But you don't have to be huge, as I say, social butterfly in order to qualify as A or even A+. And in order to have this behavior, you may need to not take on too much work. You may need to save enough spare time so you can get adequate sleep and exercise, because it's with that reserve of energy that you develop by getting adequate sleep and exercise that you're able to exhibit those A behaviors. An A employee can get degraded down to a C employee if they take on too many tasks at the same time. So let's just talk about some email-related A behaviors. Try to reply immediately when you've received a communication. So if a client says, can you please send me this report? You could reply immediately and say, dear client, I've received your request and we will process it within this week, or something like that, or whatever is appropriate. And you should, even if you've discussed something in person, if there's an email where someone asked a question, reply to that email and say, dear so-and-so, as discussed, we determined that we would do it like this, period, and send. So that way you've closed the loop, you've resolved communications so that anyone reading that communication in the future will understand what happened. One classic behavior for people that are not used to using email in a work context, don't reply to an email with many people attached, only one of those people. You should reply all. And never add people to the CC. I've gotten in trouble with this myself. Every time I think, oh, it's uncontroversial to add this person to the CC, we'll add them to include to get their feedback on something. I've gotten myself in a lot of hot water with this, where someone gets mad because, deep down the chain, there was some remark that other person probably shouldn't see, for example. So never add people to CC unless you've explicitly gotten permission from everybody. Another excellent behavior for email, don't make that email longer than about 4 lines. Seriously, not much longer than 4 lines, because the rest of the content, you can have a little more content, but it should be attachments or reference some content lower in line. But the part of the email that you're expecting everyone to read should be very, very, very short, because guess what? Nobody reads an email longer than about 4 lines. Take it from me. So another thought, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella has remarked that in his interviews with prospective employees, he always asks himself 2 questions. Will this person add energy, and will they add clarity? So I think that relates very nicely to an A or A+ employee. Okay, so now we've reached behaviors that may seem like A behaviors, but in fact they're not. So one of the most classic ones is martyr behavior. So here's a cartoon here, someone saying, after a few more years of complaining, I think I may change my life. So yeah, complaining, but in this case, it's not so much about complaining, it's about having so much work and doing so many things, and then maybe you're complaining to people, oh yeah, I'm so busy. Working very late, having very long hours on a regular basis, advertising this fact to other employees, oh, I got so much work, oh my God, I gotta do this and this and this. It can drag down the morale of others, since it makes them feel like everyone should be doing this. And rarely is staying so late or doing work unnecessarily quickly, it's rarely necessary for the company, and so it's actually counterintuitively, you think working hard is good, right? But working like that is actually just, you should be working hard, play hard, you should be working in the same rhythms as everybody else, because we're a team. And if one person is out of sync with that team rhythm, it's really bad for the team. But that's not to say that sometimes it's time to knuckle down and stay late to get something done, but it should not be a habit. And if it is, it may be the boss's fault for assigning too much work. But again, often this behavior is seen not because there is too much work, but because of the work habits of the person. So don't forget to rest. Another behavior that might seem like A, but is not, perfectionism, micromanaging every little detail, being grandiose and taking credit from everybody and trying to be a superstar, not exhibiting humility. You might think that the superstar who's perfect is trying to be absolutely perfect with everything. That's an A behavior? Actually, no. You really want to, you may be the perfect employee, but you don't need to be perfect at what you're doing. The perfect employee is not doing perfect work all the time. They are exhibiting behaviors that lead to good results for the company. Another A behavior or non-A behavior that might feel like A behavior, if you're advocating really forcefully for something that you think is true on behalf of the company, you think, okay, I'm the guardian of the truth here. I'm going to tell these people where they're wrong, and I'm going to be making the company better by doing that. But actually, again, with the primacy of the team being the most important thing for success, if you're going to cause a lot of hurt feelings or cause a problem with morale, it's not the right way to change the direction of the team. Instead, you're going to want to find other ways to convey your idea, or in consultation with the boss, you may end up deciding that it's a small point and it's not worth pushing because, and again, even if you're correct, it may cause too much of a problem with morale to really push that point. So let's just talk about the boss for a minute as we close our chat about good behavior in the workplace. The best boss creates a fun, intellectually and personally rewarding work environment for the team to look forward to and to advance their careers within the current team, within the current company, and beyond. And the best boss is not even a boss, he's a leader, he or she. And that leader tries to lead by example, by acting personally as an A+ player as much as possible. So in order to achieve that, just like the A player I mentioned before, solicit feedback from, in this case, your own employees on your behavior and try to correct that. So the best goals for a team, for a boss, should be to avoid hiring or identify F players immediately and remove them from the team for sure. And then on a monthly basis, coach and improve people who are exhibiting that D, C, and B behavior to push everybody towards more and more A behaviors and more of their time spent in A behavior. And if behavior is not changing quickly enough, then it's also the job of the boss to remove those players from the team for the sake of the health of the team. It's also the job of the boss to reward people adequately who are exhibiting A and A+ behaviors and not just leave them unrewarded. So reward them with appropriate compensation, with feedback, saying good job, and with public praise where it's warranted. So the first job of leaders is to get the right people on that bus. So to get rid of those F players and to boost the other players and to remove the D and C players and even some of the B players that can't be boosted, and get the wrong people off the bus. And then part of the job of the boss is also to get the right people in the right seats, which will help them to become those A players. Work hard and be kind. That is all. So I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation on employee behaviors. I hope this has been useful, and I welcome your feedback on my ideas. Thank you very much.